Welcome to another edition of It Takes Two. With me, I have my co-host, Sister Ruby, and to my right, I have Sheikh Ahmed Hani. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to both of you.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So, as you know, Sheikh, we have a few queries or letters that we get from time to time, or weekly, and inshallah, I'd like to read a letter and just to get your feedback.
Sure.
What has been presented to us. So it says, "Dear Take Two, I don't find my husband attractive. We had an arranged marriage, and although he is a nice man, he bores me. There is no attraction at all or mentally. I feel no lust and no love towards him. The romantic novels and tales of love are a far cry from what we share in our marriage. I have to stop myself from looking at other men and even flirting with them. What should I do?" It's obviously from a sister.
Yes. Well, first of all, I think her priority is in protecting the marriage. Okay? And I think in her letter, she's actually outlining the areas that need to be worked upon in order to protect that marriage. Okay? Which is what she doesn't find her husband physically attractive, for example. So therefore the husband might not be in shape, for example, because physical attraction is something on one level subjective, but also on another level objective. You see, in terms of how you appear, your level of physical fitness, etc. That's one aspect. Clearly this letter indicates there's a problem in communication between them. Okay? I mean, for all couples, they are two different people coming into a relationship. So they need to understand and know what the other person likes, what the other person, appreciates, and in terms of contemporary society, what turns them on, in terms of the personality, in terms of activity, in terms of, knowing what the other person is pleased by, and so forth. And this is an area where communication takes place. The fact that she mentioned an arranged marriage.
I thought about that, actually.
Yes.
I thought about that. That seems significant for whatever reason. It just seemed to ring a alarm bell.
Yeah. If
Can I interject
Sure.
at some point? Sorry. I've been trying to hold back. What I found interesting by your response, being very respectful, because obviously we all have different opinions, but being a female, I find that a lot of the time when it comes to relationships, especially when there's issues of tension and breakdown, the onus is always made on the female, and many females feel this way, that it's almost their responsibility to fix things. Now, my understanding is that Allah forbids oppression in any type of situation. So the way I interpreted the letter was saying, and it's my interpretation, the sister hasn't given us enough details, is that she stated that the marriage was arranged. So maybe the match wasn't ideal in terms of personalities, what each person likes, etc. And the tone came across as quite despondent, in that she's almost decided maybe in her mind that the marriage is dead, but she's looking for an excuse, or I wouldn't say excuse, but a way to exit the relationship. And I just found it a bit interesting that a lot of the time, especially in our community and a lot of other cultures, that the onus is made on the woman. Maybe you were saying that because she's written in and taken it the first approach, but shouldn't we be advising the sister to, well, obviously marriage is important, but please don't do anything that you may find oppressive for yourself? I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I wasn't really putting the onus on her as such. But nevertheless, if one person in a relationship detects problems in the relationship, one can say the onus is on them to open that up, because the other person is not aware of it.
So the dialogue.
Yes, but what I'm concentrating on is communication. And communication is a two-way thing. She needs to express to this man, what she wants out of this relationship, what she expects of him, and he also needs to tell her what he expects of her, and for them to work together, And I think it's not always a 50-50 type of a thing. You know what I mean? For example, he might be quite content with her, you know, but she's not content with him. You see? So therefore the onus would be on him to make himself more pleasing to her, you know, than for her than her upon him.
But doesn't she have to bring that to his attention?
Or that communication. She has to bring this to his attention. So they would definitely need some kind of sheikh or family therapist or something like that to come in between there and help them to work things out.
What I've also found in a lot of, say, therapies or when there's marital discord is when the onus is put on the woman or she initiates some type of intervention, often males feel this as degrading. They feel that the fact that you've taken it somewhere else, and sometimes it's very difficult for women to, especially if you're early on in marriage, to decipher how is he going to take this type of information. Is he going to be more enclosed? Is he going to retract from the relationship? How is this going to happen? So what would you advise would be the best method of opening up dialogue? Should say, for example, they involve family members? Should they involve friends? Or how do you approach this?
I think it might have to do with the cultural relationship between them. I mean, again, going back to the arranged marriage thing, it could be an arranged marriage within this community, okay? Or it could be, quite likely, an arranged marriage with somebody outside of the community from another country, for example. And from, usually from a lot of different Muslim cultures, they do not, you know, men and women don't communicate too well. You know, when it comes to, for example, issues like, for example, attractiveness, you know what I mean? You know, issues like activity, issues like, for example, physical fitness. A woman wants her husband to look physically fit and so forth. These types of things are not. And so in a situation like this, you need to talk to his uncle, you know, or his bigger brother or something
just
like
to jump
that.
in there, Shay, do you think that it's something that they could, if there's a communication issue, something that, for example, that she could, because she's the one that's dissatisfied, encourage him to something that they could do together as an activity as a couple? Like, say he's just, for example, he's a person that doesn't keep himself well kept necessarily, or he's not in shape. Maybe they could gym together or work out at home together.
Yes.
She could help him to go shopping for some new clothes, or say, you know, sweetheart, that would suit you, or I think that would be nice. That may be a kind of proactive way of dealing with it. But she says she almost has to stop herself looking at other men. So I don't know if the die is set, but it doesn't sound.
Well, you know, look, I mean, unfortunately, and this is quite predictable or natural, okay, that when a person is not getting their intimate needs being met in a relationship, okay, they could stray. Right? This is why I said, you know, the most important thing here is to protect that marriage. All right? When you're not getting what you think you deserve or what you need in a marital relationship, okay, you know, people tend to drift in terms of
become distracted, being
focused on other things, right?
Yeah.
You see? And this is why it becomes a very, very important for the spouses to be cognizant of what the other person wants from them.
I think it's also very important for how the subject is approached. I think on both sides there's probably a lot of tension, a lot of unspoken things that are going on. I feel that the issue might be a little bit deeper than attractiveness, or maybe for her it's more the mental
she mentions that.
You know, how they relate with each other. And I think for most human beings, I'm not even going to say women, it's important to have some kind of common ground. It's very difficult to have one thing and not the other. So I found that, as I said before, the way you approach the subject is quite delicate, breaking that initial ice, because you have egos, you have feelings. I mean, other people's feelings are involved. So I would advise this. I'm really saddened to hear by this. Any type of breakdown in a marriage is sad. But I would almost say don't involve other people, because it can cause other problems. I would say try and approach, especially if it's a new marriage, try and build up a dialogue amongst yourselves where you have a safe space where you can discuss things and approach things in a non kind of combative manner. Just say, look, you might be feeling some issues as well here. We're both new at this. You might have some reservations. This is how I feel. Do you have the same issues? Just for the ice, I would say. And then if you have any other issues, I would say bring in other people. But I think it's very important, especially in a marriage, that you solidify your union by having some type of communication, and how you say things is important. I think that's something that you learn. Even speaking to a sibling or a mother, they're going to give you a different dimension as to how they see that person, as to how you interact with them. But maybe you could give your opinion as a male. If someone came to you and said, you know, obviously I don't want to break up a happy home, but I'm feeling there's a bit of, we're not really relating. I just feel like it's more of a sense of duty, that we're not really a team. Do you feel the same way about me? How would you? There's
101 ways that you could approach that situation. But I just wanted to backtrack a little, just to maybe something you mentioned. It brought a thought to my mind that, you know, sometimes women some women, or it's commonly, some people say that women act off of emotion.
Yes.
And obviously there's an emotional issue here, but does that make it more complicated? I mean, I'm going to ask you that as a sister, is it that dimension, because he could be thinking as a man in a kind of logical and pragmatic way. I bring home the
bacon,
so in brackets, the halal bacon, the one made from lamb, right? Yeah. But you know, he's doing his duties as a man, as a provider, but maybe on a sensitivity level, his logic is not kicking in. So
sense of duty,
logic and emotion, how do they meet up?
Logic and emotion. I mean, we're all complex human beings, but with females, and I'm not speaking for all females. I don't want to be the ambassador for every female on this earth. I'm speaking for all men, though. Okay, there'll be an email address to send comments to you later. But as a female, yes, we have emotions. Men do too. I don't know, are you thinking, or do we get hormonal and we just suddenly become erratic? That can happen, but I like to think most of us are logical thinking people. I think there's as much for the male to lose as there is for a female, maybe a little bit more if this thing didn't work. But I think a lot of the time, this is why I say for females, you can get caught up in the emotion, but men do too, say in anger or frustration, and you need to take that time back and see it from a fresh pair of eyes. But I think you need to approach it in not a personal way, in terms of, I wouldn't start off with saying, I don't find you attractive. I would start off by saying, I really find that we don't have a lot in common. Is there something you like doing that I might find interesting? Do you feel the same way about me? So instead of it becoming you and him, it's a general thing, because there's, you don't have your guard up.
It's less threatening.
Exactly. But emotions, I think most girls, when they get married, they want to marry their Prince Charming.
I was thinking, what you're saying, when I look at this letter, when I hear this letter, let's say I put it in the voice of a man. It's no different. Like a man saying, I'm not attracted to my wife anymore, I'm not looking at other women on the street, for example. And I think it goes back to being sensitive about what your partner wants that makes them happy out of you. All right, is what your partner wants,
and also what you're willing to do. Because
and what
some
you're willing to
things
do, yes, and so compromise.
Yeah,
you need compromise and meeting people halfway and so on.
Doesn't seem like the sister's asking anything unreasonable.
No,
doesn't sound beyond the pale.
It's not exactly right. It's a problem. This thing is talking about a problem in communication, but it might have some resentment in here. Okay, because some people are resentful of certain types of arranged marriages. Especially, for example, your father says to you, "You are going to marry your cousin." Right? I don't care what you think. For example, right away that relationship gets into a problem from the start. You see? So you would really have to explore that arranged marriage aspect of it. You see? Because it is quite possible that relationship cannot work.
Yes.
If you're married to somebody that you detest from the very beginning because you didn't have a choice in it or, at all, for example.
Indeed. Because every time we communicate for a reason.
Yes.
We use words for a reason. Sometimes the absence of certain words, that speaks volumes. And also, but by the fact that the sister, and you know, my heart goes out to her because it sounds like she's in a real difficult situation. But the fact that she mentions an arranged marriage, my automatic thought was, I wonder if she loved him to begin with. Or is it she did, but then the lovers as you know, disappeared?
Or it could be, as we said, and this happens a lot in our community, that at the time it looked like the right thing to do. Everything matched on paper. Let's say universities, backgrounds, I don't know, whatever. But when the work started, there was nothing there. So, and a lot of the times we do that, we oversell ourselves. But when you're left with the person and you're like, this is really hard, and naturally people's minds wander. I think it's very brave of her to say that she finds herself looking at other males, and I think it's really good that we haven't come down to it, because it's natural. Sometimes when you're lonely, you look, as you said, Shay, you look for a distraction. It's not that you're looking for trouble, but the grass is always greener on the other side. So I think that's a normal thing. When you feel like you're missing something, you're going to be looking. It doesn't mean you're going to actively put yourself.
No, she sounds desperate. She sounds desperate. She hasn't started, but she said, I have to stop myself. So it's, you know, there's a kind of it's a cry for help, isn't it? There's a plea in there somewhere.
Yeah, it is a normal reaction, okay, but it's not a good one. Put it this way, right? It's a normal reaction when you are not satisfied in the marital relationship that you have, right? Many people tend to do this, okay? Look outside of the marriage while they're in the marriage, okay? This is not a good one. And from all cultural points of view, it's not a good one.
But when we say look, do we mean physically actively looking for out? Or do we mean you're on the train, a guy with a suit comes up, you look at him and say, wish that was my husband? Maybe she means that.
But even when they say wish that was my husband,
in your head,
but that's a problem. That's a problem.
But it's a natural thing. It's a natural thing for a lot of
reaction.
I would say for females and males.
No. It might be a reaction. Okay. It shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be. People should not be looking at non-mahrams and saying, especially if they're married, okay, and I wish this was my husband, or I wish this was my
Ideally,
husband.
they shouldn't be, but what we do in our heads, you know, that isn't always ideal.
Or if I can jump in, maybe the sister could even be saying, I wish my husband would present himself like that.
Exactly.
But there's something else that
That's
different. I think tells that we may have missed in this letter. She says it's a far cry from these novels. So where is she getting her information or ideas about romance?
A far cry from the novels.
Yeah, from these romantic novels. What I'm living right now is a far cry from these romantic novels. You know, this idea of like, as children, we hear fairy tales or stories, and you know, the film always ends where they lived happily ever after. But really, that's where the film should begin. Because what is happily ever after? Where's she getting her ideas of what romance should be? Is it from novels? Is that where sisters get their ideas from novels? And things like this?
Well, I think everybody, sorry to cut you in again, everyone starts their foundation of what they want their lives to be from somewhere, be it school, be it novels, be it Walt Disney. And I think especially for girls, we live in a very competitive society when it comes to females, that you're told to, you know, be the best looking, even from a young girl, you know, wear the nicest dress, have your hair a certain way, before you wear hijab, be pretty, be polite, be quiet, do well in school. All these factors are meant to ensure that you get a better chance of finding this spouse, this guy of your dreams. Then along the way, you're fed things along the way. You know, you see the prettiest girl in uni, she marries her Prince Charming, the one who's so brainy. So it's coming from all sides, even our own parents. We can look at them and say, well, you know, maybe if mum decided not to have a family, she would have a career. So I'm going to steer myself this way. So I think we're getting information from a lot of places. And in this society, when you have the media and you see people and you're like, oh, they have an ideal marriage. Of course, nobody knows what's going on going on in their houses, you say, well, maybe if I'm a bit like this, maybe if I dress a bit like that. Even in our own communities, if I wear this type of abaya, maybe it represents something, it will attract this type of person. So I think for women, we're getting messages left, right and centre, from home, from school, from our Islamic centres, the movies. And when you're in a situation when you're very alone, you feel like, I've been sold a lie by everybody. That's how you feel. Well, I'm a good girl. I'm trying to represent myself as maybe an example of, you know, the Ahlul Bayt or somebody, and this is what I've got after, you know, keeping myself pious, going to school, studying. I've now ended up with Darth Vader, for example.
So she feels, a sister in that situation, that analogy you talked about, is feeling shortchanged.
Yes, and maybe he does too. Maybe he thinks, you know, we got the CVs, the resumes, they both match, but she's as boring as a plank of wood, you know, but nobody's initiating the conversation. And so that's what
they got to talk, Sheikh. They got to talk.
I think this bringing in of the romantic novel, okay, could be quite significant. Why? You have two nefarious forces operating in the male-female community.
You say nefarious?
Nefarious forces operating, okay, that color, that significantly color, unrealistically, people's expectations of each other in a relationship. On the side of men, it is pornography, okay? On the side of women, it's trash romantic novels, okay? The more a male is into pornography, the more unrealistic his expectations from his spouse will be on a physical level.
Yeah.
All right? The more dissatisfied they might find them to be, because they do not fit the ideal that they see
The
in
fantasy,
these
the
things.
imagination. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same thing with women. All right? What they expect, because of these romantic novels, is a whirlwind type of a romance. Somebody who's extremely handsome, who's got a bod, you know what I'm saying, and these types of things. And so they might compare their spouse to this fantasy, and it might come up, shortchanged. Remember, I was saying, if you put this in the words of a man, there's not much difference. I think when you reach a point of the romantic novels, you can say, this is a far cry, from, I don't know, whoever it is your favorite actress.
Glamorous
exactly,
lady. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I would also put in there that, we all have ideals, whether it's from a novel or from a person that we know in history, or I don't think it's necessarily bad to have a kind of mindset of who you'd like your partner to be. Of course, to the best of their ability and vice versa, but I wouldn't blame it on, I think what she's saying is she's looking for love. I think that's what she's trying to say. I don't think she's saying I want to be whisked off my feet and have 1,000 rose petals as I enter the room.
I don't think she's saying she's looking for love. I think she's looking for an ideal to love. She's looking for a person who has the qualities that are lovable for her.
So isn't that the emotional feeling? Isn't that the emotional side of this emotional side of women that, as the Sheikh mentioned, men are very visually stimulated and visually moved. So the discussion about men into pornography relates on one level, but on women, the imagination and the emotion is so important.
But it's not also that; it's also action. I mean, I've seen couples where aesthetically they don't match, or one is not as handsome or pretty as the other. But what makes them fall in love with each other is the fact that one of them or both of them are doing something. So, for example, when she steps into the room, she overhears him say to maybe his mum that, mashallah, let's use the name Khadija, she's as beautiful to me as she was on the first day I married her, and this is 10 years ago. And we can clearly see Khadija doesn't look the same way she did 10 years ago. But it's the act that he did that will make something grow. If you're looking at someone who looks like a chalkboard and they don't even care that you're there, of course you're going to go to the magazines, your friends, people in your...
But life is real. Is it
It's
good that we're
real.
stimulated by a fairy tale?
But aren't we meant to be, I mean, nice to each other and make one another feel good? I mean, is it so hard for you to say, you know, I think you're wonderful, let's go and do this, and likewise? Maybe she needs a bit of action, because it sounds like the poor brother's just, you know, being a zombie, bless him. He's doing his duties, as you said. But, I mean, you can get a robot or maybe a pet dog to, you know, get your slippers for you or something. I'm just saying, you just need a bit of action, and women are all about action. You could be aesthetically look like a piece of cardboard, but you said something funny, you made an effort, and you know what? I kind of like you because you did that. And the ice will fall a little bit because you made that one step for me. And I think that's what she's looking at. If we're going back to the analogy of books or romance novels or something, she's looking for an action, something that's telling her, hey, this is worth fighting for, keep the thing going. But right now she's probably thinking, I might as well live with a block of cheese.
They really need to, it would sound like what would be best for them is that they need to start a communication. As we initially started out this discussion, that she's the one with the, at least manifest, she's the beloved sister's written in and been kind enough to share a problem. And she's the one with the problem, so maybe she needs to initiate that conversation.
But
She doesn't have the
honestly-
problem. I think I don't think she has the problem necessarily.
Or there's a problem, but she's the
There's a
one with
problem,
she's
yeah.
the one with the feeling shortchanged.
Yes.
So then
Yes.
it's the hinge. What did they say, that it's the hinge that squeaks that gets the oil?
That's
So
right.
she needs to
But
find the right
honestly,
way
it's
of speaking
two
up and communicate.
males. How would you feel, just from if a female came to you honestly and said, not really feeling this? How would you take that? I mean, would you feel demasculated? How would you feel?
I would project. I would think, what's wrong with her?
I mean, if a woman had a problem with me, for example,
Your spouse came and said to you, is it the way that she relayed the problem? Would that make a big difference to you? Or she just came and said, look, I've got my bags, thank you very much.
as a non-average person, because the average person would not respond like this, I don't think, right? As a non-average person, all right, educated and so on, my first response would be, I'd like to know what she wants of me, okay? If what she wants of me does not challenge my values, for example, you know, does not make me compromise my values, etc. You know
what
what
about
I mean?
your comfort levels?
Okay, or even my comfort level. But even comfort levels can be modified, can change, right? I'd like to know what she wants of me. What is she not satisfied with of me, right? In detail, so I can do something about it. You see? Because I think the most important thing in a relationship is for your spouse to be happy with you. You know, there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he praises people. He talks about it as their greatest happiness for you to have a spouse whom you are pleased with. Okay, it's one of the treasures of a human being to have a spouse that they are pleased with. You know, so of course, pleasure, to be pleased with somebody, is something very subjective, right? What might please you mightn't please me, all right? So it becomes very important for us to know what pleases the other person, what they want out of you that pleases them, you know, what they're not getting from you that makes them displeased, that makes them unsatisfied, you know? And for you to talk about it, to know about it, for you to contract about it. I don't necessarily mean formally contract, but to say, well, yes,
understanding.
I'm going to try to be this for you.
But it's
You see?
interesting, Brother Bilal, your response was you would say something like, well, what's wrong with her?
Yeah,
Where did that come from? Where did that kind of...
No, where that would come from is a place, is that I would, like I said, project, I was using a loaded term purposefully. But what I mean is that in a relationship, in a marriage, you would expect that before this thing reaches to number 10, if say number 10 is code red, it's a real problem, that where was the communication at 3 and 4?
See,
Hey,
why
man, I used to be dressing sharp, but I see you slipping, babes. What's going on? You know, you used to be sharp. But I wouldn't, you know, to the point, I'm kind of wondering, well, how that, what communication, what problem do we have?
As you guys were talking about that, being a woman, this isn't even my letter, I started feeling guilty for even raising the conversation. Like, my intention isn't to break somebody down, but now I feel guilty that you've had that response just by what you said. I feel that
Brother Bilal, right?
just by what Brother Bilal said, he's
I'm
ruined
the
my
bad guy,
life.
I'm the bad guy, right?
Hey guys, let's make it clear, it's him, okay?
No, but then you feel, this is the thing with women, we have so many thoughts going through our heads. We feel one way, but then we feel guilt. Then we feel responsible for the other person's reaction. Then we feel like, are we being silly? Or does this look bad on me? I'm like, don't I have a right to my feelings? So many voices going on inside. And as I said, I just felt, gosh, I feel a bit guilty now.
No, everybody has I agree with you, sister. Everybody has a right to their feelings, but I'm really driving home that point. And I guess not just about this letter, but to anybody that's watching that, it's just my opinion. But I think that communication is so important that things should be need to be communicated early. Versus, you know, whether it's men communicating with their wives or vice versa. Like, a man doesn't need to wait till she's 40 stones before he says, you know, I don't really, you know, you could kind of cut in at 20 stones.
A lot of females, and this is a problem that we have, when we want to put a view across, we treat the men like they're our friends, like another girlfriend. So we bring a female approach. So if we're close friends, I might say to you, you know, you need to hit the treadmill, my dear. And then to a guy, he's probably thinking, well, have you looked at yourself lately? And sometimes I think it's really important that you get information, and both sexes, I mean, both genders learn how to approach one another, because language, as you said, can be really loaded. And sometimes the advice that your mum gives you, that may have worked for your dad, but it's not going to work for your spouse who's going to think, sorry, that approach isn't going to...
Communication, I guess we could say that we can agree at least, although we disagreed a lot, but we could agree that communication is everything. It's been really interesting, this first segment, but we're going to stop for a short break, and we hope to see you on the other side of the break. So, assalamu alaikum.